call this meeting to order, although officially we do not have a quorum as of yet. We have 6 members. We need 8 in order to constitute a quorum. So we will be kind of operating in an unofficial capacity this evening. Our chair, Michael Dupre, has a conflict this evening, so I will be attempting to substitute for him. First one, do we have any members of the public who wish to address the board, the committee? Okay, great. We will move on. In that case, I would ask for members who attended the December meeting. Well, we really can't do this because we are not official, so we will move on from there and also defer.
No.
Well, we have 7, which is great. Welcome.
We need 8.
We need 8. Yeah, we're a committee of 14. Who am I missing?
6. Oh, yeah.
We do. Okay. Well, now, if I can count,
Well,
things will be a lot better. Dan, welcome. Glad to have you with us. Who did I miss?
I don't know. I did the same thing.
Okay. Great. Even better. Okay, so now we are official. So I will ask for a motion to approve the summary of actions from our December meeting. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Larry. So Larry and Larry. That makes it easy. Thank you very much.
I have a comment.
Yes, Yolanda.
On the minutes for our, I'm sorry. Scratch that. I'll make it later. Scratch, sorry. Okay.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is approved. Next up, I just want to say I thoroughly enjoyed that tour out at the eBay tour we took on January 24th. Matt and Vertus, thank you very much for arranging that. That was really a treat, and learned a lot. And I wouldn't say normally that I'm envious of folks commuting in from East County, but now that may change. That is going to be a great improvement and addition to the transportation system. Is there a motion to approve the summary from the January meeting?
Motion to approve.
Chadwick, thank you. Is there a second? Second. Roseanne? Great, thank you. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion is approved. At this point, I would like to welcome our newest member. We have been long trying to get more representatives from West County, and so it's my pleasure to introduce our new representative, easy for you to say, from El Cerrito, Bruce Yao. Bruce, welcome. Do you want to just say a few words about who you are and your background?
Thank you. Thank you for your introduction.
There's a button on the mic.
Thank you for your introduction. That's very kind. I lived in El Cerrito most of my adult life and most of my childhood life as well. I went to school there for junior high and high school. I spent about 28 years in the public sector. I actually attended the same school that Fifi had attended to. We both have masters from the same institution. I consider myself semi-retired now. I'm a substitute special ed teacher for West Contra Costa Unified School District, and that's the school district that I graduated from. I work mostly in special ed as opposed to general ed, and I'm having a good time. Thank you.
Great. Bruce, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. At this point, I would ask members to take a look at the attendance log, which shows all of last month, since it is a new year. If there are any corrections, please let Ferdos know about that. Otherwise, also please take a look at the meeting calendar and note that our next meeting will be exactly 4 weeks from today on Wednesday, March 28th.
I have a comment about the attendance record.
Yes, Yolanda.
So because January was a special meeting and held at during when some of us have our own other meetings to attend, namely at work, I was wondering if that could be noted that in fact was a special meeting, because there's several of us who do have an excused absence next to our name, and since this is public record, should our city council members view our attendance and see this, that at least they'll know that this was a special meeting and that in fact we did not ignore our responsibilities for that particular month.
Yeah, we can notate that, and we didn't plan on counting it against anybody's attendance because it was a special meeting on a weekday morning.
Good, thank you. The other thing I wanted to thank you for is I noted that there is a new notation here, ER, for absence due to emergency, and I think that's really important. Sometimes family and personal issues come into play, and we can't be here. And again, this is public record to ensure that people recognize that we are, in fact, abiding by our responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. We will go ahead and proceed to the major discussion items. First up, the Fair Political Practice Commission and the importance of Form 700 filing, and also ethics certification, and the new one, sexual harassment training. So welcome. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Terry Ann Grover. I'm the clerk of the board here at the Authority. Good evening, Citizen Advisory Committee Chair and committee members. I just want to provide a brief overview of the Form 700s as mandated by the Fair Political Practices Commission, AB 1234 Ethics Training, and then the new AB 1661 Sexual Harassment Training. I'll start off with the Form 700s. The Form 700s are mandated by the Political Reform Act, which requires all state and local government agencies to adopt a conflict of interest code, which establishes the rules for reporting personal assets and making or participating in the making of any decisions that may affect any personal assets. It specifically designates all agency positions that make or participate in the making of agency decisions which have an effect of any financial interest of that person, and it assigns any specific types of personal assets that need to be disclosed. As per an ordinance that we adopted in November of 2014, the Citizens Advisory Committee, as well as all of our other committees, were added as designated positions that require the filing of a Form 700 Statement of Economic Interest. As a committee member, you regularly participate in governmental decisions by making recommendations to the board that are regularly adopted by the board. The CAC provides perspective, participation, and involvement in authority policy development and implementation, such as with the Growth Management Compliance Checklist and compliance and checklists. Even if you don't have anything to disclose, you still have to file a Form 700. The filing requirements require an assuming office filing statement to be filed within 30 days of being appointed to the committee, annually on April 1st or the following Monday, so this year it will be April 2nd. And then also within 30 days of leaving office. So it's important that when you resign or are no longer serving on the committee that you provide a personal email or information for us to contact you regarding that filing requirement, because there can be penalties of up to $10 per day and up to a maximum of $100. And then if the filing is not completed, it can be referred to the FPPC, and they can also attack on additional fees. We try not to fine anyone for not filing, but it's just important that we have the information and be able to contact you. Last year, we implemented paperless filing with NetFile of the electronic Form 700s. The first year, you had to go in there and set everything up. Hopefully, if you're already in the system, this year will be a lot easier because everything that you filed last year is retained and you don't have to go looking for it. If you lost your password, you can simply click on the link and do give me a new password, and it will send you a password through email. And then if you also decide that you want to file this year and didn't, you can also follow the link and set up an account. Last year, we received 11 out of the 15 electronically, so thank you for that. This year, we've received 2 filings to date, both electronically. So when you file your statement, it covers the previous calendar year, which this will be the reportings for 2017. When you file your assuming and leaving, it's the 12 months prior to that date. So an initial email was sent out on January 18th. There's 3-week reminders going out. So if you haven't received anything, please let me know, or let Fifi know, and she can let me know. If you need to seek any advice on what needs to be disclosed, you can contact, either a legal attorney for your help, or you can contact the Fair Political Practices Commission. They have a phone number and an email, and they're pretty responsive about getting right back to you if you have any concerns about whether you need to file something. I also have frequently asked questions form up here if anyone is interested in getting them from Fifi after the meeting. And I also have the Form 700s if you choose to file by paper. The only way to file is electronically through NetFile. If you choose to file through hard copy, you do have to have an original wet signature on that, so I can't have it through email or any other form of electronic version except through NetFile. And then do you want me to take these separately, or does anyone have any questions on the Form 700 part?
I just want to mention, since I know there are a few of us who actually work with two different agencies, you only have to do it once, thankfully.
Well, because all the agencies are their own, so they use like a private party. They use NetFile or SouthTech typically, and the agencies aren't linked. So if you file with your agency, it doesn't mean I get it. So what you have to do is either go in there and do it twice. Unfortunately, everyone wishes FEBC would have had a universal program. The other way to do it is you can print it out, do an original wet signature, and mail it to me if you don't want to do the filing twice. So.
Well, I did with the city just a while ago, so you wouldn't have record of that, would you?
No, every agency is a different filing officer.
Let me have a hard copy then, and I'll do it a hard copy for you guys.
Yeah, you can use the same one, just make sure you put an original wet signature on it.
Well, I'll just take one of those.
Okay.
Well, do I understand that after we complete which I did, online, you keep them here? Is that it?
Yes, I'm the filing officer for the authority.
So they don't go up to Sacramento?
No.
Okay.
Only certain filers are actually go to either the county or the state. But for the Citizens Advisory Committee, they're kept here, they're on site here.
Okay.
If anyone comes in and chooses, asked to see them, they have to be shown them on site right then. So they do remain here at the authority. And I'm your filing liaison.
I have a question. So the deadline for filing is when?
April 2nd.
Thank you.
Which is a Monday.
Yeah, I was told by my other agency, my other committee that I'm on, they filed for me yesterday, and they filed for they did this one as well as the cemetery board that I'm on. Did it come through?
No, I haven't checked it since yesterday, probably since last Friday.
Oh, okay, because
But if
they just
they
did it.
They would have to actually go onto our CCTA NetFile portal to file.
Okay. Well, they also did it for me last year, and it went through for both. So they do it for me every year.
Oh, you're supposed to do it on your own.
Okay.
Yeah. But if they filed through that other portal through NetFile, I won't receive it.
Okay, I'll check it then. Thank you.
Okay, I can let you know tomorrow if I have it. I'll take your name. And Mr. Rosenberg, I don't have yours as well. You said you filed already? Did you use NetFile? Oh, this is, no, Form 700. You have to go in and you select anything that you have to report, stocks, rentals, incomes, gifts, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I did.
Was that in the last few days?
Oh, no, this was maybe 2 months ago. 3 months ago when I first got on the committee. Very interesting.
So you were appointed last July, right?
Well, I was appointed, the first meeting I could go to was in October, because I don't think I was officially appointed to the committee until close to October, because that was the first meeting I attended.
Let me look, because if you file after October 1st, you don't have to do an annual the next year. So I can let you know tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. July 12th.
Are there any other questions about the Form 700? All right, let's go on to the next item, which is the ethics certification training.
Okay, so the other requirement is ethics training, which is mandated by AB 1234. It requires specific local officials to receive at least 2 hours of training in general ethics principles and ethics laws relevant to your public service, and then also every 2 years after that. The training focuses on establishing and maintaining public trust, and that the activities of the representative of the authority are done with integrity, economy, physical prudence, and are done in matters that retain and inspire the trust and confidence of the people that the authority serves. Newly appointed officials must receive the training within 1 year of assuming office on the committee, and then again every 2 years after that. We send out a link to take the training. It's a 2-hour online training that's free through the Fair Political Practices Commission. At completion, a certificate is provided, and it does print out how much time is spent on the training. It needs to be a minimum of 2 hours, and it will print on there exactly how much time you were in the training. And then once you have that certificate, you'll go ahead and sign it, and then you'll email it over to Fifi. We don't need an original. An email copy is sufficient. And then you'll want to make sure when you go to FPPC, we do give you the link to the local, but you want to make sure if you go there in your own another route on the internet that you make sure you take the local officials and not the state, because the state does not satisfy the requirement. This requirement only applies to local officials who either receive compensation for their service or are reimbursed for their expenses. So if you choose to receive travel reimbursement for attending the CAC meetings, then you'll want to take the ethics training. Is there any questions?
Those that don't get paid for this don't have to do the ethics training.
Yeah, it's only required if you want to be reimbursed. So you'll want to let Fifi know, though, if you select to forgo your travel reimbursement.
I
And
don't get anything like that.
yeah, definitely communicate with Fifi and let her know so she can keep track of that.
Any other questions about the ethics training? And now part 3.
All right,
The
so
new
the new requirement, originally there was AB 1825, which mandated all local agency officials to receive training in sexual harassment prevention, training and education within 6 months of hire and every 2 years thereafter. If the local agency provided any type of compensation, salary, or stipend to those officials. And then the new law that just came into effect last year, AB 1661, now extended the requirement to additionally require local agencies official, which is defined as members of a local agency legislative body and any elected local agency official, to receive the training if they're providing any compensation, salary, or stipend. So again, this would be a training that you need to take if you want to receive reimbursement for your travel to the meetings. The training and education requires information and practice guidance regarding the federal and state statutory provisions concerning the prohibition against and the prevention and correction of sexual harassment and the remedies available to victims of sexual harassment in employment. The training and education shall also include examples aimed at instructing local agency officials in the prevention of sexual harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, and shall be presented by trainers or educators with knowledge and expertise in this area. We do have a training that we can provide you through our HR consultant. They use Keenan Safe Personnel Training. It's a 2-hour online training, and at the end, a certification is provided, which will need to be initialed and provided to Fifi. So if anyone is in need of the training, let Fifi know, and we can have our HR consultant register you for the training. And it's free to you. The authority will pay for the expense for the training. So definitely let Fifi know if anyone wants to take that training, or again, if you don't want compensation, then you don't need to take the training. Are there any questions? Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Dorian, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and attention to detail. All right, next up, I would like to welcome Brian Kelleher, who is the CCTA Finance Manager, to give us an overview of the authority's project and program funding process. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brian Kelleher. I'm the finance manager here at the authority. Been here just about 5 years. Matthew had asked that I come and give a presentation on the authority sales tax. So we can ask questions. You can ask questions as we go along, and I'll go over how the authority, as you guys already know, it's a tax measure. We have a strategic plan as well, who outlines where we spend all the money. Here's the historical sales tax revenues. In 2013, after the downturn in 2008, 2009, you can see over the years it's increased 8.8% in 2013, and you can see in the middle about 2015, 2016, about 5% each, and it's been relatively flat at about 2%. And so we have budgeted for the 2018 fiscal year, which runs July through June. We expected to receive about $86.5 million. Here's a graph here who takes there's about 100 different categories for all the different places that you shop. And we lump them in together, and there's not 15 exactly in there, but there's a couple that get grouped together. So the top 15 producers in there, you can see some of the larger revenues is retail sales, new auto, restaurants, and then we also have the non-retail, which is kind of the online internet. I've got Amazon in there because they're one of the biggest contributors for collecting sales tax. If you go to the far right-hand side, you can go down and look. So gas produces about 8.4% of our revenue on an annual basis. Retail stores is about 17.5%. New auto sales and leases is about 12.9%. And restaurants is about 10.1%. As the economy moves up and down, you can see that we're retail, new auto, restaurant. Everybody goes out to dinner, spends money, and our money fluctuates in that capacity as well. This right here is a look of just the first quarter of our fiscal year 2018 versus 2017. The State Board of Equalization, it takes about three months or so after the end of a quarter to get you the information. We're about a week away from getting 6 months of information, so you guys just get the snapshot of the first quarter here. So in the passage of the Measure J expenditure plan, we also have, you take the dollar, and for every dollar of sales tax that we get, it gets broken down into individual categories. So the largest one in there is the capital projects. So about 42.5% of all our money is allocated for capital projects. That's about $36 million. And then we have the local streets, maintenance, and improvements. That's returned to source on an annual basis to the cities that you guys all reside in. And that money is to be used for slurry seals and your pavement improvement programs, and some additional sidewalk work as well. And then we have the bus service for the bus program, so that's about 8.5%. We send out about $7.2 million a year to the individual bus programs, and we have, as you go down the list, you can see right in the middle, transportation for livable communities. Those are projects within your individual jurisdictions. So we collect the money, and then we work with your individual jurisdictions to do the improvements, and we make allocations and resolutions. And sometimes as we collect the money, it could take several years for us to actually get the money to you because of the jurisdictions sending us invoices and getting approved and different things like that. So, but all this money is, just like your individual cities, is set up in individual pretty much checkbooks, and that money continues to grow and grow and grow until all the work is done, and then the authority will be done with the Measure C program, or the Measure J program. We've done the same thing with the Measure C program. There's some additional monies that have been left over when that ended in 2009. There's some money left over for the 684 interchange, and some additional work in Danville and a couple other little areas as well. And then at the bottom we have administration. There's a 1% cap for administration. So our salaries and benefits for people that are allocated to the administration department, just like a city, we have individuals, even though it's one person, we are split up in certain percentages, and we work across the board for projects, planning, administration, but there's a 1% cap in there. We always run about 3/4 of that 1%, and that additional money is left over to cover additional expenses that may happen after the closure of the measure, as we need to continue out the closeout of Measure J. So that, I will move back to that page in case anybody has any questions, but if you have any additional questions, please ask. I will do my best to answer them.
I have a question. So I have, thank you so much for this report. I appreciate it. Just a couple of questions. For the bus programs that receive approximately $7 million, do we monitor the usage of how many people actually use the bus? And the reason it's a trick question. And the reason I ask is because living in the city of Lafayette, I see those buses come, I see those buses go. They never come on a specific time. So if I was ever to use the bus, that wouldn't happen, and they're empty.
I work in finance, and so I am not in charge of the bus program, but what I can tell you is those buses, and there's been discussion, and this is just, they need to be there in case for full potential use. If there's 50 people sitting at the bus stop, 50 people get picked up, so they can't send a smaller bus even though it's not being used. There is some performance data and behind in all the details and all the weeds with that, and working with all the bus companies. There are certain allocations for each district based off of the strategic plan. So you have East County, West County, Southwest, Central. They all get a certain percentage, and it's divvied up to the individual cities. So the accountability part, I personally in finance cannot answer.
That's really my concern, is the accountability part. I mean, there's buses that do run from the Orinda BART station to St. Mary's College, and they certainly have passengers who ride them, and they are on a schedule, so people do know when they're going to leave BART and when they're going to leave St. Mary's to go back to BART. Maybe for my counting, and I'm not around all the time to monitor, but I see maybe 6 people. I think that's wonderful that 6 people are using the bus. I think probably more people would be able to use the bus if it came on a scheduled basis, when you would be able to take me to BART rather than at 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't have a use for a bus at 9 o'clock in the morning. So just my comment. The second one is...
Yolanda, before you continue, I live in Moraga, and there is a bus schedule for this number 6 bus that goes to both Lafayette and Orinda BART for a good part of the day, and service is limited to pretty much every 30 to 45 minutes, except during the 2 peak hours. It's a little tighter, but it's like a lifeline service. If you were to look at it from a dollar and cent service, doesn't make sense, too expensive. But to get people who need some type of transportation to get from one of the 2 BART stations into Moraga or Orinda, both situations, I think that's the way you have to look at it. You could do that with the entire system, and I'm sure that Central Contra Costa Transit Authority looks at all this. So they give small Moraga a little bite of the budget, as well as Orinda, and it's the way it works.
Right, and in the bigger scheme of things, when I consistently hear that traffic is choking us, and what kind of mitigation are we looking at? We're looking at alternative transportation. Buses are an alternative transportation, perhaps maybe not to the population at large, but there is a population that could utilize it, and it's the schools. The high schools could certainly use it on a scheduled basis, and the middle schools could certainly use it on a regular basis. And yet, I continue to hear how getting a child to school in the morning and picking that same child up in the afternoon is becoming a nightmare. I think we all have to sit down at the table and figure it out, because 4 or 5 people using that bus from Orinda Bart to St. Mary's College and back to Lafayette doesn't make any sense to me. The second thing that I want
Yolanda?
Yes.
I just, that prompts maybe a good future presentation to take some of the pressure
Yeah.
off of Brian here. We're
No,
going
no.
to bring in our transit program manager who can speak to some of those points.
The reason I brought it up is because I'm looking at the percentage that's given to the bus, and I just want to know, is there any kind of performance evaluation on that money? And also for the transportation money that we're giving to safe transportation for our children, is that money being used to underwrite the school buses that we're actually using? Because that's a great program.
There is built into a number of these programs. There is a subsidy and I do see when we do make the accounts payable payments to some of these bus companies, there's vouchers for children, and there also is, money in some of the other counties, or not other counties, some of the regions within Contra Costa County that gets money for busing children as well. It's all based off of the location and the way the strategic plan was written up. So we're just pretty much a pass-through agency on these, and we do some analysis. And as Matthew was mentioning, Peter, our programs manager who works directly with the buses, can maybe help you with your questions or direct you to someone at an individual agency that might be able to help you on those.
Yolanda, appreciate your comments and concerns. I will mention, kind of piggybacking with what Larry said, the special service, the morning and afternoon service in Orinda, heading out to Orinda Intermediate School and Miramonte High School is very, very well used. No question about that. I know the high school students, they really would prefer not to be caught dead on a bus, but many parents say it's either that way or you walk. But so, I mean, I note that it is a lifeline service, but it is very well utilized by students in Orinda. I can certainly vouch for that. Great.
I can make one comment on the future of this. Part of our operation is that in Concord, we are considering limiting, in the new section, and then we're considering 1 car to 1 house. And we will have a well laid out. It'll go down to the end. It'll run from the North Concord BART station down to the end of the new development and back. There will be a train of sorts, or we haven't decided on the mode of transportation. But it is going to limit the amount of cars that we can have. So they may, that's something that other communities may have to put on the board to limit this. We have a terrible, terrible situation, as you know, and we in Concord are trying to alleviate some of that. We will have our traffic study completed, I think, the end of May on this, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. So it's going to be addressed here in Concord because of the crowds and the use of the almighty car.
Are there any other questions for Brian? Brian, thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it. Next up, I'd like to welcome Mark Watts, who will provide an update on current transportation-related legislation. So let us know what's going on in Sacramento.
Happy to, and thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for having me here today. By introduction, I'm the contract lobbyist that monitors legislation and assists the Transportation Authority on goals and objectives in Sacramento. I don't need to give you my background, but I've spent 30 years doing transportation policy, so I'm in a good situation. I thought tonight I would do a couple things. First, just make sure you understand what the Transportation Authority uses for its legislative process, how to determine when to weigh in, and what their goals and objectives are going to be. I can do that very quickly. I've got some examples of bills that have gone through that process, and then give you a couple highlights of current bills that are going through the process and wind it up. So essentially, in the fall of each year, the Transportation Authority staff and I collaborate together on developing goals and objectives for the next year. Very specific items such as protect transportation revenues. And so when we put that list together and bring it back to the APC committee and then onto the board, and it's adopted, it's a guideline for me to monitor the introduction of legislation throughout the year. And if I identify something that's either violative of the goals and objectives or supports it, I bring it to the staff's attention here. And the staff in this case is Lindsay Willis, who's been in position for several years now. And then together we decide what to bring back to the committee, and the committee then adopts a position or recommends a position to the full board. So that's basically the cycle that we're in. And then when we get to the end of the legislative session, afterwards we collaborate again for the next year and get ready and prepared for developing a new program. Some examples of bills that went through that process was 2016's AB 1665 by then Assemblymember Bonilla, and it made an important and critical change to the statutory authority for the TA to pursue a sales tax, the second sales tax that was on the ballot recently. Without that legislation, the authority would not have had the authority to go forward with that tax proposal. In addition, that same year, Assemblymember Bonilla also carried AB 1592, and this was a bill that was consistent with the goals and objectives that were adopted, and it provided the authority for CCTA to engage in the testing of autonomous vehicles at Bishop Branch and at Gomendam Station. And that authority has been exercised, and they've been using it ever since. It's since been eclipsed this week with the final regulations by the Department of Motor Vehicles, by the way, that grants broad state authority for permitting of the testing of autonomous vehicles. But without this legislation in 2016, we would have had to wait 2 years and twiddle our thumbs and not get ahead of the rest of the state. Some recent legislation introduced that we identified through the evaluation process. Mr. Grayson, local legislator here, has introduced a bill that would lessen the likelihood of legal lawsuits against CEQA documents. And he's busy currently getting ready to present that bill in the first committee when it comes up in March. And he's developing support from organizations across the state. In addition, well, I think that was pretty much the key one from this region. A couple of bills that are in play right now that deal with land use and housing, not just transportation issues, is Senate Bill 827 by Senator Scott Wiener from San Francisco. And it's a controversial bill, as it exempts housing projects that meet certain qualifications from adopted height limitations. And that's intended to facilitate more infill development in urban areas. And a controversial bill that's emerged is AB 1759 by Assemblymember McCarty from Sacramento. And that legislation would penalize cities or counties that don't meet certain production standards under RHNA, the Regional Housing Allocation, by withholding certain roadway repair funds and reallocating to other cities that are meeting the objective. The author has heard loud and clear that that seems seemingly an unfair, and that he should convert the bill into more of an incentive-based bill rather than a penalty bill, and he's working to come up with that alternative solution. So we'll see. Yes, exactly. And finally, just to update you on non-legislative activity that's really got the attention of a lot of folks in Sacramento, there are two measures. One's I actually adopted and put on the ballot in June of this year. It's Proposition 69, and it would lockbox protect some of the revenues that were adopted along with Senate Bill 1, the transportation funding package. And that measure is, as I indicated, scheduled for a vote by the statewide electorate in June of this year. And there's support developing from cities and counties, CSAC, League of Cities, the Transit Association, and others to protect their revenues.
When you say lockbox, we prevent it from being reallocated?
Correct. And in addition, we're all watching, a lot of us are watching this very closely. We have no control over it. There's a measure that is trying to get on the ballot for November that would repeal Senate Bill 1, which was the annual $5 billion transportation package that was adopted a year ago, April. They're very close on, according to their counts, the number of signatures. They need about 580, and they need a ballot signatures to qualify for the November ballot. Nevertheless, they probably need to collect twice as many of signatures so that when you do the validity checking, the right number meets the Secretary of State's objectives. So with that, I'd be happy to take questions. I think I hopefully gave you a feel for how we interact, how I interact with authority staff and management to the benefit of the of your community.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, maybe necessarily not directly transportation related, but definitely housing related, as it ties into RHNA and probably the growth management plans that we'll be looking at. Senate Bill 831 on additional dwelling units and the fees, interconnect fees, utilities, all that. Do you know where that stands, what the impact could be to local agencies?
I don't know where it stands because I'm not following that particularly specifically, but I'd be glad to let Matt know where it stands and he can forward the information directly to you. That's SB 831. I mean, there's 1,000 bills themselves were just introduced last Friday, so to meet the deadline. So it's hard at this early in the legislative session to understand all the different bills, but I'll get the information on SB 831. Any others?
We have a speaker card from a member of the audience, and I believe this is a member who was a former member of the committee, David Current from Pinole. Mr. Current.
Hello, all. I know a lot of you. I came here because I wanted to kind of mentor someone from Pinole who wants to join the CAC, and I thought I would just accompany him. But as you know, I'm on the Planning Commission of Pinole, and there are a lot of legislation that passed last year about housing. And being on the CIC, I know that affordable housing is a very important issue for us. And I think there were a lot of, the state really took an aggressive action as far as passing legislation into removing a lot of the barriers that we've had in getting housing as far as local opposition goes. And they passed a series of laws, including like SB 35, which would basically say that if a jurisdiction is not meeting its RENA requirements, that if something is zoned for affordable housing, if something is zoned for multi-use housing, if a developer comes in, they are pretty much entitled to build there, which I think would be very much of importance to the CAC. So I think it would be good if, I don't know if Mark would like to talk about that or something like that, but I think it's really worth a session to go over the housing legislation that was passed last year because it's quite significant.
We could look at agendizing that. Matt, we could look into the resources we can bring to bear for that.
Sure. Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good. Good to see you.
All right. Move on to the next item, which is, we're actually looking at item 2.4. Chair Michael Dupre really wanted to lead that discussion, and unfortunately, he is not able to join us this evening. So if there is no objection, I would like to ask that we table that item and discuss it at our March meeting. Are there any objections? Great. Okay, so table that and add it to the March agenda, please. All right, moving on to reports. Stephen, welcome. And I didn't grab a copy of that, but I guess it's back there. So if you could let us know what's happened at some of the meetings you've attended.
Actually, I think came from the February meeting. The board approved the plan specifications and estimates for the I-680 southbound HOV Completion Express Lanes project. That was a large one. The other one, and this has been a problematic one for a long time, especially for the bicycle people. We are entering into a cooperative agreement with BART to add them as a funding partner to complete the design of the State Route 4 Mokelumne Bike Trail Pedestrian Overcrossing Project. And the authority itself was added another $350,000 appropriation of the final design services. The reason BART is getting involved is now that same area is slated for an eventual E-BART station. That will be the location in Brentwood of the E-BART station. It will probably start out being a park and ride lot. But an overcrossing will be not only important for the bicyclists to complete a major segment of the Mokelumne Trail, but also for people trying to get over walking or biking over State Route 4 to the park and ride lot when it comes into being. In essence, 10 acres is being set aside for an eventual BART station at that area. It'll be a long time probably before we see it happen. Although I think RM3 is supposed to provide some money to get that started. And as Mark Watts pointed out, we have two major transportation issues for the November election. One is getting regional management RM3 passed, and the other is holding off the attempt to repeal SB1, which would seriously set transportation back. So if there are any questions off my report, I'll do my best.
Questions for Stephen? Stephen, thank you as always for attending those meetings, providing the summary. We certainly appreciate it. All right, moving on to item 3.0, CAC member and staff comments. Matt?
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the E-BART tour, the Antioch Hillcrest E-BART station tour that many of you were able to attend last month. So we decided to put together a little thank you note for Director Keller. If you weren't there, the BART director for East Contra Costa County actually led the tour, as well as the main engineer who runs the maintenance facility over there. So it was a really quality tour, I would say, at least from my perspective. So we wrote a little note here that says, Director Keller and team, just a brief note to thank you and your team for the tour of the Hillcrest Avenue E-BART maintenance facility and trains. Your historical insight and enthusiasm for the project were appreciated and have assisted us in our continued efforts to improve the transportation needs for the residents of Contra Costa County. Signed, the Citizens Advisory Committee, Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and it's got a picture that we took of everybody in front of one of the trains in the maintenance facility. So I'm going to pass this around for you guys to sign. You can sign it even if you weren't there, but definitely for the folks who were there. So I'll pass that around now.
Thanks, Matt. Well, we enjoyed that tour so much, so I'm going to just once again ask, is there any chance that we're going to be able to get a tour of the Gomentum station at some point in the near future?
I think I've heard this question before. But,
I think I have.
Yes, and I was bugging our liaison to Gomentum Station just today about it. I think well, I don't know if you're supposed to know this, but the power was out at the facility for a few weeks, so that's kept people out most of the last month or so. So we're trying to get things. They're still testing out there. It's just the building where we would be staging has no power, so we can't really bring guests out there. But the companies are still madly testing on the facilities out there. So yes, we will get a chance to take you out there, probably when the rains have ended. But yes, it's number one on my priority list for you guys. And Fifi, should I mention redefining mobility? So along those lines, I mentioned this at our last meeting, but I'll just remind you again since it's getting close. We have our annual Redefining Mobility Summit, which is kind of our celebration and our annual way of looking at the new technology that is emerging in transportation, autonomous vehicles, and the stuff that's going on out at Gomentum Station is one of the main components of the conference, but it brings in others who are doing things elsewhere. It's really kind of the cutting edge of transportation and mobility, and we do have discounted tickets available for all of our committee members for $50. Our old San Ramon rep, Ms. Menina, is no longer on the dais for you guys, but she went every year, and she was kind of a big cheerleader for it. She really thought it was a really good event. So I'll channel her tonight and encourage you all to attend. It's March 29th at Bishop Ranch, the big conference facility there called the Roundhouse. There will be lots of things running on their own, robots and different autonomous vehicles running around that you can check out, plus lots of national and internationally renowned speakers in the transportation and technology fields. So it's definitely worth attending if you have the time. And Fifi is on the planning committee, so you can talk to her if you're interested in registering. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt?
Comments?
Yes, please.
Matt, thank you so much for putting that tour together. I know that was a lot of work, and yet you made it seem so simple. So I'm grateful, even though I wasn't able to attend. I was there in spirit, and I was there in spirit, and I can see all of you guys and how impressed. That's an engineering feat. I don't know if most of you realize that, to get that freeway widened, get that money appropriated, and then get the momentum going that we're just going to keep moving onward to Brentwood. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Other comments from committee members? Oh, Jolie?
So we had our former committee member here, David, and David was instrumental in putting together a committee that actually had us look at the growth management checklist review. To say that that's a painful process is not giving it justice. And David is the one who came up and proposed to us that we should have a subcommittee to review the checklists when they came in, so that we could come in and give you a summary of what sometimes was a convoluted group of documentation. We made sense of it. We met with Martin, and I would strongly urge you to consider when Mike returns next month and asks for people to consider being on this subcommittee. I urge you to give it a lot of thought. I also want to tell you that it's going to be a lot of work. So just keep that in mind, because we met, I think, sometimes twice a month in addition to coming to the meetings here. And David was a huge taskmaster. I don't mind saying that now, since I don't report to him. But, yeah, please give it a lot of thought. Otherwise, we'll be here till midnight and reviewing those checklists, and we really don't want to do that. We want to be able to give the people who do put this checklist together a heads up if there are any issues that don't look right to us, so when they do come in and we ask them questions, we can move that along to the board.
Thank you, Jolie. I'm going to do a little bragging on behalf of the city of Orinda, because I recently learned that the Public Works and Engineering Department received from the Northern California chapter of the American Public Works Associates the Public Works Project Award in the Small Cities and Rural Communities category for their work on the minor road sinkhole. So that was a nice bit of recognition. And also the League of California Cities named the 2017 Measure J&L Pavement Rehabilitation Project in Orinda as the winner of the Outstanding Local Streets and Roads Project. I worked on, in fact, I was co-chair of both of those revenue measures, so it's so nice to see all this work come to fruition. But I know, and every city has tremendous public works departments, and we need to recognize them, and I'm very pleased to just kind of give a shout out to Orinda for those two recognitions. Any other comments? Dan?
I've got a quick announcement, which is just some of you may have seen the Line Bike pop up around here. So it started out at Shaylin's and then Walnut Creek and Pleasant Hill BART, and those are dockless bikes. You can just swipe with your phone basically and take it to whatever point you want. So people have seen them showing up at businesses and around the trails and all that. And I hope you guys try to take advantage of it. But it's a neat innovation that hopefully gets people to try something different.
Yeah, I was wondering, do people just drive around and drop those off? Because there's been some that seemingly random places.
Yeah, they drop them wherever they want.
All right.
I have a,
Yes.
hello.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Patricia.
That's okay. A couple of things. I want to let you know that the stoplight in Byron was turned on last Thursday. And it has made a huge difference.
Which intersection is that?
Well, we don't, I guess we'll call it an intersection. It's Camino Diablo Road and Byron Tracy Highway. So it's really nice to not have every car stopping in front of my house now. But we're thrilled that it's doing so well. The other thing I wanted to say, and I've talked this over with Matt, and I'm pretty sure all of you know this, but BART would never have existed if it hadn't have been for Supervisor Joe Silva, who was the deciding vote when it was 2 for and 2 against, when they finally got to the point where the 3 counties, originally the 5 counties, and 2 had dropped out, Alameda and Marin, and it was Joe Silva who was the deciding vote to make BART happen. The governor called him that morning at a coffee shop in Martinez. I'm sure you all know the story. I think it would be great if this committee wrote a letter to Joel Keller and asked them to consider naming the Brentwood BART station after Joe Silva, because otherwise we wouldn't have BART. It's just a suggestion, but, and I know none of the BART stations have ever been named, but it's kind of sad because he had promised Brentwood that they would get a BART station. Little did he know it'd be 60 years later. But anyway, it's a thought, just kind of throwing it out there. Thank you.
And Patricia, P.S., that was this deciding vote to bring BART to Contra Costa County. Out your
Yes.
end.
But no, it was the deciding vote to put it on the ballot for everyone. Because up until then, they couldn't put it on, put it on the ballot. But if he had voted no, it wouldn't have gone on the ballot. So Bart did a real great article on it, several years ago, and I have a copy of it, so I will bring a copy for everybody so they can read it. It's not very long, it's just one page, so, okay?
All right, we've had a couple ideas for future agenda items. Are there any other agenda items that committee members would like to suggest?
Come over here and make a presentation.
So there is, I'm sorry.
Did Guy Vet? Oh, here?
Yes.
At this meeting, okay. There is going to be a presentation on the Naval Weapons Station next week by Guy Bierke, who's the project manager.
You mean next month?
Next month, excuse me.
Great. Thank you.
So Larry Rosenberg and I were speaking earlier, actually prior to the meeting starting, and he had asked about the crosses at the Lafayette, across the street from the Lafayette BART station, if I knew what was going on there. And as it turns out, I am sitting on that committee to remove the crosses. There is a group that is seeking to buy that land. It's about 5 acres. There are 4 homes on that land. The entire land cannot be built. It's not. However, what is recommended is to renovate the 4 homes that are already existent on that land and make it affordable housing for veterans, and to remove the crosses and make a professional-looking monument that honors the Contra Costa County fallen heroes. So I bring that up because one of the future discussion topics that are listed here is affordable housing challenges. And so perhaps maybe we might want to speak with the people who, if they get the money to buy the property, would come and give you their overview of what kind of affordable housing is being planned in Contra Costa County for veterans.
Any other items or remarks for the good of the orders? Oh, wait.
There has been a group of veterans from the, what do you call them, the vets from this area at the Naval Weapons Station meetings a lot, and I'll get the guy's name. I think that he's kind of over the whole central Contra Costa area to see what he can do, because he's trying to get the site, some of the land from the weapons station as donated to the veterans building.
Foreign Wars.
Pardon?
There's the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion. Those are the 2 primary.
Yeah, I think it's American Legion. I'm not sure, but they would probably know who's been doing it over there for you.
Well, I'll contact Matt and give him the name of the group that is. I don't have any more information. We'll be meeting in 2 weeks regarding the property in Lafayette and what other properties they're purchasing in Contra Costa County that is specifically targeted to build affordable housing for our veterans.
Unfortunately, the longer that stays there, the worse it's going to be to get rid of it, because the historic people will step in and try to maintain it. So I've run into that in my former employment. And if you come in the middle of the night and take them all down, it's better than leaving them there. I know, but I also know what you're dealing with Section 106. So the sooner the better you get that done.
Yeah, that's a love-hate project, since initially it was built to oppose the war, and then as the war continued and more of our young men and women were either killed in battle and or came home and committed suicide, that switched. So you've got more people loving the crosses than hating them, which is a switch. And so the purpose is then to have town hall type meetings regarding it, so that we don't have to go in under the cover of darkness and remove them. I'm not doing that, okay?
Yeah.
All right, any other comments? All right, I just want to thank all the committee members, our staff members in the audience, and I hope that David, your colleague from Pinole, will be joining us at some point in the future. That would be great. Otherwise, if there are no objections, we'll call the meeting adjourned, and we will see each other again here on March 28th.